One of the things I do more than advertising is this, that nobody gets rich in advertising. Can you name any advertising billionaires? Zero. There are no advertising billionaires. Can you name any advertising millionaires? You'd be very hard pressed to name 10 or 5 advertising millionaires. Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra stole the credit thing. He directed. He was nothing. He was a chota line producer. But that launched his career because I was back in Hong Kong. He lied to everybody saying he'd done the film. Balls. He'd done nothing. I mean, Rakesh, if you're listening, you're a thief. Tam Bram kind of career tree was very defined back then. If you're good at maths and science, very lucky because you can be an engineer or a doctor. If you're good at maths, not science, you can go to commerce, right? If you're good at science, not maths, okay, medicine. And not good at maths, not good at science, we'll have to find you somebody rich to marry. The very first company we did was Redbus, did pretty well. In fact, we invested at when they were doing 2 tickets a day. And we finally sold the company when they were doing 125,000 tickets a day. And the really interesting thing is we kind of helped fire that growth without a single ad in print or TV. So one of my thesis then came from them saying, the entire idea of virality, in the sense that if you need to advertise, you probably need to die. You have to figure out how to grow by word of mouth. So I keep pushing guys and say, what is remark worthy? Even with the companies I work with, the companies I invest in today, what is remark worthy about your business? Tell me something that's remark worthy. And if not, let's engineer something that's remark worthy, because that is going to help you grow by word of mouth. And that's really going to get your biggest acceleration. You don't come to me and say, bhaiya, baranda banana, ads lagao. And most of the companies that do baranda bana ke, they're the ones that fail. I mean, all the ones that put a huge amount of money to advertise are the ones that always crash. Everybody makes money of them. The media gets rich. Times of India makes money, and Star TV makes money, and the companies don't go anywhere. So it's a joke that 60% of all venture money goes into Google and Facebook. Why should I invest in you? I might as well buy Google and Facebook stock, right? Because मेरा पैसा वहीं जाने वाला है.
Welcome to another episode of Sell Side Conversations. Today, our guest is Mahesh Murthy. Mahesh wears many hats. As per him, you would say he's just a Barbie pass, studied till class 12th. Mahesh has been in advertising, has run a music channel, started his own marketing company, been a venture capitalist, among other things. In a conversation with him, we'll find out about his exciting journey from Hyderabad to Hong Kong to Seattle to Mumbai and to Dubai. Mahesh, welcome to Sell Side Conversations. Hi, Mahesh. Welcome to Sell Side Conversations. It's a pleasure having you here.
Hi, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Gautam.
Perfect. So, Mahesh, I was going through your LinkedIn bio, and it's quite eclectic. You've sort of launched Amazon, MTV, then sort of worked with rival Channel V. Then you went on to form your own agency, Penstorm. And then again, you jumped into another investing career with a bunch of successful startup, exits over there. So there's a lot to talk about over here. So let's begin with a little bit of background. Who is Mahesh Murthy? Can you just walk us through your early days, influences, education? Let's set up the context for audiences over here.
I'm still not sure who I am. I think, as somebody said, the purpose of life is to find out who you are, and I think I'm slowly getting there. Uh, uh, so essentially, as you've kind of noted, I mean, eclectic is a nice word for saying confused, or a career with a lack of focus. Uh, and it's all right. I've never particularly believed that focus is something that you need to highly rate. I think it's quite overrated. So anyway, just quick background. I started out as a pretty, one of those pigeonholable, Tam Bram, good in math, good in science, good in academics kind of guys. Brought up to always try to get 100 on 100 in maths and so on and so forth. And did well in school. I think I topped the school in the state in my 10th and came second in the state in my 12th and all that. So academically, I was.
What was new for you? Which city did you grow up in?
Oh, actually, yeah, I'm a Fauji kid, so I was somehow blessed or cursed with the fact of never having to be in one city more than 2, 3 years at a time. So I was born in Hyderabad, grew up in Srinagar, in Baroda, in Mussoorie, in Assam, and Hyderabad. Well, Hyderabad was a theme that kept going back and forth because dad kept getting posted. I mean, he was out when I was born during the first Pakistan war, and when I was growing up during the Bangladesh war, he was out again. So every time there was a war, he was out there in the forward area. We sent to grandparents' hometown of Hyderabad. So I had 2 or 3 stints in Hyderabad. Finally, he got again posted to some place where there was no CBSE school. So again came to Hyderabad to do my 10th, 11th, and 12th at a Kendriya Vidyalaya, Central School in Picket. I was lucky and blessed at the time that Hyderabad had this culture of inter-school competitions and stuff, and I, not particularly being hugely interested in academics, that was kind of a given. So I jumped into that, and that was where I kind of started figuring out that I had, more talents than just setting out to be an engineer. I think one of the things I remember doing, I was telling my son the other day, who's going for his inter-school competitions now, that I landed up. I mean, I would go for the quizzes and debates, right? And one day, I mean, in those days there was no internet, so you couldn't check anything. And I heard that there was something happening in the school. So went there to participate in the quiz and debate, and then figured out after 1.5 hours of travel by bus that I landed up on the wrong day. And on that day, the competitions that were on were primarily kind of for girls because there was rangoli and there was singing and there was drawing, and the
Okay.
quiz was the next day, right? So, yeah, so not knowing what else to do and being the only guy out there and being rather shy back then, I actually entered all those competitions. And oddly enough, I won all of those. So it was very strange to come home and tell my mom that I won a Rangoli competition and I
Did
won
you
a singing.
participate with the girls? Did you sort of compete with the girls over
Yeah,
there?
yeah, against the girls. I mean, they're all individual, right? And so of course, and next day I of course had to go back and kind of redeem my short reputation by 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 winning the quiz and the debate and the elocution also. So I think once you do a little of those, you kind of figure out that okay, I'm talented in a few things. Maybe see the standard Tam Bram kind of career tree was very defined back then. If you're good at maths and science, very lucky because you can be an engineer or a doctor. If you're good at maths, not science, well, you can go to commerce, right? If you're good at
Right.
science, not maths, okay, medicine. And not good
Yes.
at maths, not good at science, we'll have to find you somebody rich to marry. So those will those were the four career paths, and somewhat
I
we
think the template sort of defines almost every community in India, not
may-
necessarily Tam Bram.
maybe, yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah. So so somewhat being cursed with an ability with maths and science, I was told, you're the lucky one. You have a choice, engineering or medicine. And the only guiding force I had back then was, I didn't like the sight of blood on others. So I said, this
Mhm.
must mean that I cannot be a doctor. And with that advanced logic, I got into engineering. And after a year of engineering, I was one of those medical students, etc. I figured out that I had zero interest in engineering. All right. So I think I was sitting down one day at home listening to my uncle's record collection. And one of the records he left was Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. And there was a song called Time, right? And the lyrics are something like ticking away the moments that make up a dull day. You fritter and waste the hours in an offhand way, hanging around on a piece of ground in your hometown, waiting for someone or something to show you the way, etc. And I said, hey, that's me. That, I'm hanging around on a piece of ground in my hometown, and so I was pretty clear that I was listless, directionless, and I was very clear that I did not want to be an engineer. I had no idea what I wanted to be. So, in one of those things, I stopped going to college, and of course, my dad, being a type A Fauji guy and all that, he kind of put the hammer down after 1 week. I said, what nonsense? You're living in my four walls, and in my four walls, my rules, and my rules are you will go to college. So I said, okay, if that's a conditionality, I will leave home. So I left, I was 17, I left home. I haven't really gone back since. So, uh, I had won some NTS scholarship or something when I was in my 10th or something. Uh, I had some few thousand rupees in the bank. I took it out, went out. There was some shitty hotel in Hyderabad where I was paying 50 rupees a night. And lived there. My second or third day, I got a job. I was not a graduate. And in those days, for non-graduates, there were very few jobs to pick from. So I got a job as a salesman for a vacuum cleaner company. Uh,
And this
and
was all of 17. You were all of
yeah, I was
17 then.
17. Yeah, I was 17. Yeah. And so I think, then I started failing upwards. So I failed as a salesman. And then they kind of said, okay, we'll make you a sales trainer. So I failed a little less as a sales trainer. And then I tried to start my own business. And then I failed at that and failed at a bunch of things. And then eventually, I think all of us who are complete failures at everything else land up in advertising. And so, so landed up in advertising because, hey, I figured, it's actually selling, but it's selling by writing words. And said, I can write some words. I understand words. And I did not feel so much at advertising. So I started in a small agency called ASP, which was owned by the Birlas back then.
You
And
still in Hyderabad or you moved to
this
Mumbai
was in
first?
this was in Hyderabad. And I remember, discussing with the branch manager back then and having a 4-hour debate for him to hire me. At the end of which, he reluctantly hired me at a grand salary of 300 rupees a month after a 4-hour debate. right? And about paying 300 rupees a month for a fresher. And anyway, I got in, then won them some business. And again, I was a guy that they didn't know what to do with. So they did ask me for a copy test. I remember they said, the creative director was very pissed off. He said, "What nonsense! I don't want an intern. Who the hell sent you here?" I said, "The branch manager." He said, "Yeah, that asshole, whatever else it is, right?" So he said, "Okay, I don't care. Just do me an ad." I said, "Dude, you got to tell me what to do an ad on." He said, "No, I don't care. I don't really need you. Just do me any fucking ad, any campaign." I said, "Tell me something, man. I don't give a fuck. Do me a campaign on a potato." All right. So I said, okay, potato. So I did a campaign on a potato. I don't even know what I wrote. I had a big headline, and it was one of those Fallon McElligott kind of lines, smart, whatever, headline and copy and nice drawing of a potato. And he looked at it and said, "You did this?" I said, "Yeah." "You drew this?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, copywriters can't draw. So you need to be in the art department." I sent it, then he sent it to the art director. In those days, the copy and art departments are different. So the art director looked at us, say, "Okay, you can draw well, but you wrote this?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Art directors don't write. Go back to the copy department." So then they fought for about 2 hours as to each one believed the other should have me. And finally he said, "Look, please, dude, don't worry. Just take me anywhere." All right. And the art guy once saying, "Look, in the art department, nobody knows how to spell. This guy knows how to spell. Take him out of it. He doesn't belong here." Right. So finally, I was actually kind of sent to the copy department because I knew how to spell. All right. So I think one of the benefits of an education is I ended up as a writer instead of a designer because I could spell. Anyway, so long story short, so they would put me as like the fifth guy. I mean, there were like three teams doing campaigns, and I would be the fourth one doing campaigns. I've ended up with a few of those campaigns winning accounts, and then blah blah. Work for another agency, uh, Ulka in in Hyderabad. I remember meeting with Bal Munkar once, and I think this is interesting. So we worked like 3 days nonstop for a pitch, and he'd
Okay.
come into pitch to do the pitch. And I was really very young and I was showing off and said, "Hey, Bal, you know what?
Which brand was it? Do you remember the brand name?
Yeah, the brand, I think it was Allwyn or, one of those things, Allwyn refrigerators or they were making scooters or one of those things, right? Allwyn was the brand. It was, and so I was like really showing off saying, "Bal, I came here Monday morning and it's Wednesday evening. I'm still here. I haven't gone home in 3 days." He looked me up and down and said, "Bloody inefficiency." And he walked away. I said, "Fuck, for this." So, so I was deflated. But anyway, we didn't win that business, but it was all right. So that later on, I think I landed up in, I figured out the Mecca was Bombay. And the only three agencies I wanted to work with were Trikaya, Rediffusion, or Enterprise.
Okay.
So Rediffusion, I think Kamlesh Pandey was there. He shooed me out. He said my work wasn't good enough. Uh, Enterprise event, I didn't meet Mohammed Khan. There was another guy who met me there. He said, "Yeah, blah, 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 whatever, and I'll come back to that guy later." And then Trikaya went, and again, Chris De Rosiero was there, a legend back then. And he looked at my work and said, "No, not really." And then finally said, "Do you have any rejected work?" I said,
Okay.
"Yeah." And I took out some rejected work. And on the basis of the rejected work, he gave me a job. Right. So that
Sorry?
was cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the cool thing was later on, anyway, many years later, the guy from Enterprise who rejected me for a job, I funded his company and I reminded him that, "You know what, I'm funding you." Right. So, so it was interesting. Anyway, so Trikai was good. It was great agency. Again, there was a bit of technophobia back then, and I used to code a little, etc. All of that's in school. So I wasn't scared of technology. I loved tech. So I remember a pitch coming up for some for HCL computers in Delhi for Unix, and nobody the heck knew in Trikaya what the hell Unix was. And I was like, I know, I want to work on this, right? So Chris said, "Yeah, do some shit," right? So I did this campaign, and they were in Delhi, so the entire thing got shipped courier to Delhi, and the guy went and presented it, the branch manager. And the guy who looked at it, the client then, lovely guy called Shumit Bhattacharya, apparently told the Delhi branch manager, "All right, tell me who wrote this." So
Origin.
he of course said, "No, it's Chris Rosoria." "No, no. Chris can't write this. Tell me who exactly wrote this and come back and talk to me tomorrow." So the guy called up and said, "Who the fuck wrote this?" So they said me, and I had to, tell him something on the phone. So he went back as, "Yeah, we have this like college dropout dude who wrote this, blah, blah, blah." So this guy said, "Here's the thing, right?" He says, "I'm going to give you the entire HCL account if you move that guy to Delhi." All right.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and I loved Bombay. I didn't, I was like in a mecca of advertising, and I'd just gotten a raise and all that. I was, before the raise, I was paying 2,500 rupees as rent on a 5,000 rupees salary. And then, I got a raise. And then I said, Now I'm comfortable." So this guy called me and said, "Look, we're getting this multi crore account and we're transferring you to Delhi." I said, "Fuck you, I'm not coming." right? And so this thing went on back and forth. And Chris said, I can't force the guy to go, right? So finally, the guy came down, wheedled me, then offered to double my salary. And I said,
Okay,
no, that's good. So I went up to Delhi.
that's
So
a
I
good.
landed up in Delhi doing a really cool stuff, bunch of HCL stuff. Ended up winning Copywriter of the Year and whatnot and whatnot. So it was good fun, and it was a great relationship. I mean, the client would come to my house at 7 in the morning, have chai on my barsati, give me a brief, and say, "Up to you just send me the lines and whatever. Don't even send me the artwork." And then after that, after I okay the lines, just send the artwork off to the publication. So it was a wonderful time. We won lots of awards, did really cool part-breaking work, etc., and so on and so forth. So that was. I'm sorry if I bored you. That was
Amazing.
early advertising in India.
Wonderful. So it's amazing that you just self taught, and you sort of without any formal education, formal training, you sort of jumped into advertising.
Yeah, in fact, I'll tell you another story on that. So, after Trikaya, I actually, at the age of 23, I kind of figured I had a midlife crisis. I was already in the best agency in India, earning a fuckload of money in those times. My dad had retired after 32 years of service with a 3,000 rupee pension, and I was earning 5 times as much as him, right? At the age of 21 or something, with no education. And he's like, "What the hell do you mean you're a copywriter? You don't even have a good handwriting. What can you copy?" Right? So he had no idea what a copywriter did. So he actually then sent a few friends to check if I was a drug dealer, because he says
Okay.
nobody legitimate can make that kind of money, right? So my friends actually came back and said, "Uncle, we don't know what he's doing, but he's not dealing drugs. He's doing something apparently legitimate, right?" So my dad was deeply disappointed with the course of history, that somebody so obviously unqualified gets paid a lot of money, and this was a deep wrinkle in the fiber of space and time that should be corrected eventually. Anyway, so uh, anyway, I had a midlife crisis. I was earning really well, and I figured, okay, now what next? I was already in the best agency, etc. So I said, okay, fine. I bought an air ticket, which was I was in Delhi, Hong Kong, Singapore, Delhi, and said, okay, I'm going to go get another job. And I want to work in Hong Kong or Singapore, which were then the glory days and so on and so forth. The best place that you could aim to go. Again, interesting story here that we didn't have a fax machine in the office. The world was on faxes. We had a telex machine. A telex machine is like a typewriter connected by a wire to a typewriter at the other end, right?
Correct.
So, on in one issue of A&M that Shrikant Khandekar used to publish, right? Uh, so he brought out, this was a list of advertising agencies with their fax numbers, and some had telex numbers, right? In Asia Pacific. So I said, okay. So I started sending telexes, all right, to these agencies saying, I'm coming, right?
Okay.
And so I landed up in Hong Kong. One of the guys at Ogilvy said, yeah, 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 come for an interview. I went in there, and the guy, there's a big, tall, 6 foot something, South African creative director. He looked at my work and said, it's shit, it's shit, it's shit, it's shit, it's shit. This is complete shit, utter shit, bullshit, shit, 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 right? I said, anyway, you know what? I really think I love the idea of you sending a retro telex and everybody else sends faxes. I'm giving you a job. So I kept quiet. I didn't have the heart to tell him, we don't have a fax machine, dude. It wasn't really me being retro. We only have a telex machine, and anyway, that's how I got a job. So I was at Ogilvy, Hong Kong. I had to take a double demotion. I went from ACD back to copywriter, back to CD, etc. for a time, but did well. I mean, I learned quite a bit about. My entire team was non-Indian, and
Okay.
about working with Chinese people. Not thinking in puns, because puns don't translate. So thinking visually and so on and so forth. So I learned a lot, because the campaigns you had to do had to work in Hong Kong as well as Laos, right? So it was a kind of a bizarre thing, but learned quite a bit. Did well. That was the time when actually, I on one of my trips back to India, I noticed MTV in India, and then 6 months later I noticed MTV. I mean, the first trip MTV was like everybody loved it. 6 months later, I was like, yeah, MTV, right? So I went back and said, okay, I know what's wrong with these guys. Again, in my complete arrogance, I was maybe, I don't know, 25, 26, whatever. I picked up the phone, called, give me the head of MTV Asia, and some yank came on. And I said, you don't know me. I'm so and so. I work at Wrigley, but I think you're fucking up in India. You don't have a clue. You're going to die very soon. The guy said, oh, well, why
You
don't you
said
come in?
this, actually said this to the
Yeah,
MTV.
yeah, yeah. I don't know who it was. It was, some guy called Steve. He said, hi, I'm Steve. Yeah. So I said, Steve, you don't know me. My name is Mahesh. I work with Ogilvy. I live in Hong Kong, but I go back to India often. I think you're fucking up. You're really good. You're going to die in India. So he said, Mahesh, why don't you come and talk to me? So I went there and figured out he was the managing director of MTV Asia. The receptionist had put me through the MD. And sure enough, I talked to him, and And later on, I said, okay, so why don't you come back and tell us how to change this, right? So I came back. I knew nothing about making films. Chicago was very text heavy business, text ad thing. So I frantically called my best friend from India, a guy called Shashank Ghosh. He's actually a director. He's made Viredi Wedding and Vaisa Bhi Hota Hai and all of those really nice movies, Khoobsurat, etc. And he and I were best buds, so we still have pretty good friends. I said, come over, fuck, I know nothing about films, right? So we sat back and said, okay, we went to him with the overall thing was, that they were not, the thesis we went with was, MTV stands for rebellion. But all you were showing is rebellion in the American context, which meant purple hair and toned pants. I said, purple hair and toned pants are not rebellion in India. It's stupidity in India, right? Back then.
Yes.
I said, rebellion in India is something else. It's, going against your parents and, dropping out of school, blah, blah, blah. So we did this rebellion in a very Indian context, right? So I said, the, 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 the brief is correct, rebellion, but you can't execute it in an American way. You've got to do rebellion Indian style. That's what MTV is all about. He bought it. We did a bunch of films, Ear Cleaner, this, that, which won a huge amount of awards. I won the best young director at Cannes for it. Some of the, I think Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra stole the credit thing. He directed. He was nothing. He was a chota line producer. But that launched his career because I was back in Hong Kong. He lied to everybody saying he'd done the film. Balls. He'd done nothing. I mean, Rakesh, if you're listening, you're a thief. All right? I'll tell you right now. So, uh, that actually did well. We, won lots of awards, etc. Did okay. Again, I was very interested in the digital front. 93, I remember reading a Wired magazine, the second or third issue of Wired magazine. It talked about this hot agency coming from Apple Computers, setting up a digital interactive advertising agency. I said, "Fuck, this is the future." And I went to my, regional Asia director of Ogilvy. I said, look, this is what we need to do. We need to set up a digital interactive advertising agency. He said, fuck off. It's never going to happen. I still think Ogilvy feels that way, 20, 30 years later. I still think that they don't understand digital, right? So back then it was, yeah, ain't nothing. So anyway, so this was before the browser. There was no browser. So I kind of tracked them down somehow, and then I learned Unix email. So I started chatting on Unix chat. And it turned out to be the founder of the agency, and uh, he then said, "Okay, okay, come over to the US." It was really bizarre. So I was just like, "Wow, American agency," and he was saying, "Wow, brand guy from Ogilvy wants to join us." And somebody said, "Just hire the guy." So sight unseen, they kind of hired me, and I landed up in the US again. Interesting tale. My and my so I went for an interview in the Silicon Valley office. I didn't like it. I didn't like the area very much, and I was by then married, etc. And I figured I wanted to have a kid. I said, I kind of wanted this work, this remote kind of working. I said, "Do you have like a nicer city?" He said, "Yeah, yeah, we have a small office in Portland, Oregon." I said, "Yeah, Portland's very green." So I went there. I loved the place, and I applied for a job as a copywriter. I interviewed with the creative director, who's a big American guy. So yeah, whatever. And then I met the branch manager, who creative director said, "Yeah, fuck it, we don't need you." So I said, "Okay, fine, it's all right. It won't happen." So I went back to the hotel room, and that night I get a call from the branch manager saying, "Can you meet me in the morning tomorrow?" So I said, "Okay." I went, met him for breakfast. So that guy asked me a few questions and said, uh, "Well, I would like to offer you a job. Would you like to join me?" I said, "Yeah, that's amazing. I'm sorry. I thought I was rejected by the creative director yesterday." He says, "Yeah, yeah. I let him go last night. I want you to take his place."
Oh, really? Oh my God.
So, yeah, so I ended up, and my announcement was, he had misspelled my name. My Murthy had, and I think the executive assistant had put as M Murphy is joining us. So I go in there, I get into my room, and then so I can hear Bernie, who's my branch manager, come in with this very kind of Caucasian lady saying, "Hi, I want you to meet a new creative director." And I've been announced as Murphy, right? So
Okay.
I'm looking at the window, and she comes in and turns around. She goes, because she didn't expect to see a brown guy. She thought it was an Irish guy she was going to meet, right? And she was like, and she did that, and she covered up her shock that she thought it was some Irish guy, and I was like, and I realized this later because she kept saying, "So when were you in Ireland?" I said, "I've never been to Ireland." "So was your father in Ireland?" I said, "My dad's never been to Ireland," right? And then later on, I figured that she thought my name was Murphy,
Oh,
and again, after 5 minutes, she said, "You speak English very well." And I didn't know what to say. I said, "It's amazing. You do too. Where did you learn?" And the poor woman's face became very small. That's when I figured out, that's kind of the thing they hold over. You speak English very well. So I've learned to, give this back since. Hey, amazing. So do you. Where did you learn English? And, so that actually kind of tends to put people on a level footing if they come in condescending at you and so
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I probably talked your head off, but that's how I landed up in advertising the US. Again, I this was a long story. I was coming to how do you learn, right? So again, one of the things these guys, so I ended up doing. I kind of was a big believer in that the internet would go B2C and the company was entirely B2B. They're like, yeah, you're a B2C guy. Fuck, we don't want to talk with you. So one of the first things they said was, hey, there's this little thing, there's this portal that needs a redesign. I don't want to touch it. Who the hell does B2C stuff? And so I said, be. And I went there, and it was these two guys, Jerry Yang and David Philo, sitting in Stanford in chuddies. I went in my pant and shirt and all that. And they were founders of Yahoo. So Entertainment by redesigning Yahoo. And in fact, even today, some of the icons that we used back then. So it took me like 30 days to figure out all the division of human information into, what are the categories. We're the first guys to figure it out. And it was all done in my conference room, with post-its all across the wall. And I didn't know anything. I just did that myself. And eventually that landed up with me saying, hey, I want to pitch for a small business in Seattle. Is run out of a small warehouse with somebody who sits at a door. And the guy said, no, 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 we don't. I said, no, no, I want to do it. I said, yeah, at your own risk. So I go there, etc. And we were in the business of this company, which had 7 people. And my client was this guy called Jeff Bezos, right? So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so this is Amazon. So we ended up designing his website and so on and so forth. Learned a lot from him. And I remember,
How
so
was you working with Jeff Bezos in the early days of Amazon?
yeah, so yeah, so I'll tell you one of my kind of one of the things I learned most about him. I'll give you two Jeff Bezos stories. So one, I'm sitting with him at breakfast one day, right? And it's like one of those things. I'm managing the client. I'm by them branch manager or whatever director or whatever the heck, right? So you have your monthly meeting with the client. So and he was giving me a lecture, right, on what we should do in advertising. And I'm like, Jeff, I spent 10 years in this business. You were 2 years ago, you were an engineer. How the
Uh,
fuck do you know all this, right? And he looked at me and said, Mahesh, I own a bookshop. And it took me a while to figure out that what he was saying was when he didn't know anything, he would go to Amazon.com, buy all the books on the subject, read them, and then come for a meeting. I thought
wow.
that's such a cool way to learn. I said that's awesome, man. I mean that, and since then, I've never been kind of scared of still not being a graduate. I'm a Barmi pass as they put it, and I've done a bunch of different things, including launch satellites and whatnot, and I've just committed by saying, yeah, I read up. What's the big deal, right? And now we do a lot of AI work, etc. And
Is that your mantra? You sort of read up on a particular topic and then sort of try to get as much as
yeah,
information
I
as
just
you
read up.
can.
Yeah, I read up whatever I can. I mean, I think one of the things few life skills I have is I read, right? And when I was a kid, I used to read a book a day. And I think while many of those were fiction or many of those were kind of very naughty fiction, I don't have, I mean, I prefer a little more of nonfiction now. It's just that maybe I'm growing old and whatever the heck it is. So that was one thing I learned from him. And the other one was again really interesting. I remember that we were doing, I think, the second version or the third version of Amazon. And a long time ago, we were building for Internet Explorer. Chrome was not a thing. It was taking over. IE was taking over from Netscape. And they just come with this entire thing called frames, which allowed you to lay out a site beautifully. Till then, sites are just pieces of crap. There was a long list. If you go back to archive.org and see what Yahoo looked like or Amazon looked like in 96, that's what we were designing for, right? And so we said, hey, you know what, Jeff, we're going to use frames. And we checked and all that frames were usable back then in 189 out of 191 countries in the world, right? And, and it really allowed the entire thing to be laid out well and so on and so forth. So, in fact, I'll tell you two things from this story. This one was on frame. So we went out and I really said, Jeff, this is beautiful design. We got it. It lays out your stuff so beautiful. It's this, blah, 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 blah. And he said, no. And we said, what? He says, it's not going to work in Kosovo. We said, Jeff, you don't get any customers from Kosovo. He says, look, there's about a few hundred Americans in Kosovo, and one of them orders from you every 2 months. All right. I don't want to say no to him. All right. And this was amazing. So this guy was by then having hundreds of thousands of customers, and he made us change a redesign because one guy could not use the site who was sitting on a Lynx browser and a military internet equipment in Kosovo.
Kosovo, okay.
Right. And he says, I'm sorry. And his analogy was perfect. He says, if I'm building a shop, all right, and you can tell me that the door is 3 feet wide. And I say, but one human being is 3 feet 1 inch fat and won't enter. I said, I'm not going to open the shop. I just built the road wider for the guy to enter. Why will I not let the guy come into the shop? And even though, as a creative guy, I cursed and cursed and cursed the decision because we had to go back to a dumber looking layout. Later on, I figured it was right. I mean, that was the original inclusivity or whatever. But from a business point of view, why do I say wrong no to a customer anytime? Right?
Makes sense to sort of have it a more
Yeah,
broad-based, more
it's just
general.
we're simply not going to let technology dictate design. We're going to let the customers dictate design, and that was one cool thing I done. So the other one was actually before this. He'd asked us to do the logo identity and all of that on Amazon. Amazon was only a bookshop then, remember, right? So we said
Correct.
books, Amazon. I'd done this entire thing called the biggest bookshop in the world, and so on and so forth, and we had done really well. All that, this entire jiu-jitsu positioning, and we'd taken on Barnes and Noble and peed all over them, and it was like great fun stuff. And so I said, bookshop, Amazon, the only analogy that comes to me is like the Amazon forest, right? Books are like this forest,
Correct.
this vast thing full of creatures, mysterious things, and there's knowledge at every, that's what it's. So we did this entire thing based on the Amazon rainforest, right? The entire look and feel was this rich, dense place full of great stuff. And he looked at it and said, no. We said, Jeff, this is what Amazon is, the books. He says, that's books now. All right. And one day I'm going to sell everything. I'm going to be the biggest volume seller of everything in the world. All right.
Wow.
This is not going to be it. And he was only selling books and there was nothing on the anvil for years. He said, no, that's it.
He carried in his thought even back then.
Yeah, yeah. And in 97, he knew what he would be in 2004. All right. So hence we had to go back and do there was a river A coming, there's a river coming out with letter A, later on became A to Z and so on and so forth, right? Yeah.
Arrow.
So I learned that back then. I mean, the guy knew very clearly what he was going on about. And so those are a couple of things I learned from dealing with Jeff back then. Sorry, back to you. I don't know if I
No, one,
monopolized and took the conversation somewhere you
no,
didn't
no,
want
it's
it to go.
so wonderful, examples, anecdotes over here. So now, obviously, you were in the US, and then I think you moved back to India to run Chandvi. Is that how
Yeah, yeah. So
the course
so
of?
so here's what happened. Yeah. So here's what happened. So we launched Amazon, did well. As an agency, we went public. I did well. They put me on the board of the company. So I, had a NASDAQ IPO, made more money than I knew what to do with in my life. My friends were all buying Porsches. I had no desire to buy a Porsche. And then essentially I got hired, by somebody who said, uh, we build Amazon for everybody. So it was like a e-com in a box, like a very, very early, right? So it was a company called ICAT, which stood for Interactive Catalog Corporation. It was a
Okay,
venture funded company. I didn't even know what venture was. So I went and joined them as a VP of marketing. And, so finally they were building this very complex product that you had to buy software and upload it, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things I was pushing very hard was you should never, you should not need to learn how to code, how to, if you know, if you want to build a site, right? So I really pushed for this kind of skunkworks project to build all of this online. All right.
okay,
And the management was against, no, 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 we're a software company. Everybody sells software in a box. What is this online shit? So anyway, pushed hard. Finally, the online man took off because people just wanted to come to a website and build a website. And by in a couple of years, at one point, I was running 6,000 stores on my platform, including Bloomingdale's, 1-800 Flowers, you name it. Every store in the US was on our platform. And so my job was not just to get more companies to become e-com ready, but to get those who had already come and used the product to get them to sell. Because okay, I built my site, but nobody's coming. So it was a pretty great education in e-com, running 6,000 stores for some of the biggest brands in the US and figuring out how to increase their sales.
already a question of Shopify.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. Yeah, except they were all on this platform and they didn't know how to sell. So we had to do all the marketing for them because they would not pay the renewal of the software license if they were not selling. So we had to actually sell for them and not just build their store, etc. And this company had, some money issues. Intel acquired them. Intel by then had the crazy plan that we will embed e-commerce in every Pentium chip. I don't know what the heck they meant, but we got bought by Intel. And I remember
okay.
calling my dad saying, "Hey, dad, my company got bought by Intel." And he was like, "Finally, my son ends up working for Intel. What you were supposed to be doing all along." So good Tam Bram boy is supposed to go to Intel, but anyway, I had no desire to work at Intel, and he was so disappointed when I told him that. So what had happened back then was when I was in Hong Kong and helped launch MTV, etc., and it had done well. The MTV was on back then the Star TV network, which was run by a Chinese company. That Chinese company had sold to News Corp, uh, and News Corp came in and said, "Why the hell am I paying a license to?" to MTV, which is Viacom, which is a rival brand. Screw it. I'm going to take the same people and turn it to a new brand called Channel V, right? So they had a new global head, etc., and he took over. So the same MTV team became Channel V. MTV went off the air, and Channel V was the new brand. And the global head looked around, came to India, and India was in deep shit back then. They were like number seven, number eight, or whatever. And he talked around to a few people and said, "Who can set this right?" And apparently, three or four people said the only people who can set it right are these two boys, Mahesh and Shashank. They had done MTV, they know this shit. So he went to Shashank, and Shashank said, "No, no, 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 no. Mahesh is a guy. I'm not doing anything without Mahesh." So this guy, he called me and said, "Look, I need to talk to you. Come down." So he paid for my fare, and so I went all the way from the US to Hong Kong to meet him. And so he said, "This is what blah blah blah." And can you help us set this right? We're not doing well. So I said, you know what? I'm not interested in the job, but we'll figure it out. So I told him and Shashank, here's what we do is that I do a 30-day consulting thing. You pay me so much for it. I'll come back and tell you at the end of it if anything can be done, and if so, what is to be done. So I came
Okay.
to India, did this. I met, Coke, Pepsi, all the big brands, MPB, whoever I could make in 30 days. Came back with, an entire. I first wrote an entire deck and then threw it out. And then I remember before going for the presentation, Shashank and I were. So I said I wrote one sentence, a very long sentence, and broke that sentence into some 35 slides. There was one
Okay.
sentence, right? It had a few words on each slide, and I
You said
spent
it.
it was I don't remember. It was one sentence. There's entire presentation, one sentence was broken into 35 slides with two or three
Okay.
words per slide, right? And that was what I presented. So my entire presentation was one sentence, but it took an hour and a half to present. So Shashank and I presented, and finally he says, "Yeah, okay, I buy it." I said, "All right."
Wonderful.
So I'm done. He said, "You pay me, I'm gone." He said, "No, no, 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 no. The thing is that I buy it, but you are the guy who has to go and implement it. As fuck, I'm not interested in a job." So we had a big fight. "I'm giving you a job." I said, "I don't want a job." So finally, we settled on a crazy thing called consulting CEO. I don't even know if there is such a thing, right? So I guess so I said, "I'm not an employee," etc. And it was again really funny. So he says, "Okay, how much money do you want?" So I said, "Give us some time." So Shashank and I sat in the room outside his office. I said, "Kitna?" He said, "मेरे को पता नहीं." I said, "ठीक है." So I said, "Here's a piece of paper. You write your number. I'll write my number." So he wrote his number. I wrote my number, and we compared the numbers, and my number was 10 times his number. All right. And he says,
Your
"तो क्या
that
पागल
time
है?"
Shashank.
हाँ.
Your number was Shashank number. Okay.
Yeah. I said, he said, "तू पागल है?" I said, "नहीं नहीं." So I said, "भाई ये करेंगे तो इतने के लिए करेंगे per head." So I said, "Okay." I went that and took that number to the guy inside. The guy looked at it and said, "This is more than what I earn." I said, "Yeah, yeah, too bad." I said, "But you can't do this. Only we can do this." So he said, "Okay, let me take it to the board." And from the goodness of his heart, he actually came and said, "Actually, you're on." I said, "The first time I've hired a guy for more than what I pay myself." All right.
Who's
So
this guy, man? Who's the CEO then?
there's a guy called Steve, a lovely guy, right? And he a different Steve, and so that's how I came to India as and again, interestingly, almost didn't get paid. So what was really interesting is that after we did this entire thing, Channel V, I mean, the internet was coming up. I believe that we need to do a user-generated content kind of internet thing, precursor to Facebook. And I went to them and said, "Look, that's what it's a youth channel, it's not a music channel. We should do this." He said, "No." All right, nothing doing. So I shut down three programs and did a skunk works, in one small house in Juhu. We started this entire thing called vindia.com with 30, 40 crazy guys out there. And finally, it won every award out there. And then Goldman Sachs came and valued it at some $40 million, given that Channel V was really awarded 10 million. And this small
Okay.
little thing, which was an illegal part of Channel V, was valued at 40 million. Suddenly they woke up and said, "Wow." And then,
What's oh yeah.
yeah, Channel V had five shareholders. I think BMG, EMI, Sony, Time Warner, and News Corp. News Corp basically has to keep quiet, and they went and bought out the four others, right?
Oh yeah, okay.
And they said, "Okay, now we're all this is very highly valued." And they said, "Now this is yours." I said, "First, give me the money." And then James Murdoch, he started playing dirty. "No, no, I'm not going to give you the money." All right. No, there's no that. It's too much. Who the hell agreed to pay this money and all that? So I remember at one point we had this crazy call. I was sitting in Bombay in my office, and they were in Hong Kong, etc. I said, "Here's the thing, right? I'm giving you 30 minutes, and in 30 minutes, if this total amount of money does not hit my bank account, I'm going to do a delete star on vindia.com. All right. India's biggest website and the award-winning website is going to go off the grid, And you can take the stories in the press because you can't recover it because it belongs to me, not you, right? And the guy sweated bullets, but on the 27th minute, the money came in.
Wonderful. Wow. Really?
I s- yeah, I said, okay, here's it's done, right?
It's like
So
the movies.
yeah. So it was really one of those things where the CFO was sweating bullets. He's like, "Hum baad mein denge." I said, "Chance hi nahi hai." I said, "It will happen now or never. I'm deleting. I don't give a fuck. I'm going." Right? He was like, "Pay that." I said, "Nothing doing." And finally, I think then you figure out that how you become a billionaire is by being stingy. So I think we actually गोटी squeeze किया and then फिर पैसा आ गया. I think that's kind of like I think that was
How long was
reasonably.
this stint with the DH1? No,
Sorry,
sorry.
Shanvi.
Channel V. How long was the stint? The acting
So
CEO or the
yeah,
production?
it was up to 2.5 years from 1998, 99 till 2000, 2001. And then it got acquired by Star TV. It became India.com, which is a piece of shit. I mean, I don't think they knew how to run it. They broke off the television and the .com side, which is cool. They didn't understand. I mean, there's one brand, and they said, no, this is pure online. And I think even now people get it. There's only one brand, but it died. It became India.com and it died. I think whoever.
I think it died long back.
Yeah, it died after that. So those were that's how Channel V happened, man. And but it was good fun. So in fact, one of the things I learned while I was in the US was this entire thing saying, so my friends would come and say, यार तू ये internet marketing थोड़ा जानता है, तुम
Uh,
हमको help करना. And I'd say, okay, and I'd get involved. So, okay, one of my kiras in advertising, and it's still a kira, by the way, right? And one of the things I do more than advertising is this, that nobody gets rich in advertising. Can you name any advertising billionaires? Zero. There are no advertising billionaires. Can you name any advertising millionaires? I think you'd be very hard pressed to name 10 or 5 advertising millionaires. I mean, you can find 10 plastic piping millionaires, 10, you know, potty manufacturing millionaires, 10 Bartan Balti manufacturing millionaires. You can't find 10 advertising billionaires. So
well, you
this
can find billionaires if they sort of if they went into found companies. Otherwise,
no, even then, I mean,
executive
tell me how many advertising agency owners are US dollar millionaires?
um, it's difficult to say right now,
Yeah,
but
but
for
I'm saying,
for a
but
few,
an average balti banane wala is US dollar millionaire,
correct.
right? So the thing about our crazy business is that you know it's very glamorous. Everybody thinks, boss, you're in advertising, you must be having sex every day, right? Hot models and like किसी को कुछ समझ में नहीं आता कितना कौन क्या काम करता है. And finally, at the end of the day, somebody, because finally it's just consulting. Everybody thinks they can do advertising. मेरे जैसा अनपढ़ लोग आ जाते हैं तो तूने कुछ पढ़ा नहीं है, तू क्या जानता है? मैं भी कर दूंगा, correct? Which is true. I mean, why the hell not? So the thing I kind of figured a long time ago, and this I figured out in the US, after doing Amazon and Yahoo, etc. I figured that with annoying regularity, my clients were becoming billionaires and I was not. And I thought
Hmm.
this was like deeply unjust. What the fuck? Like I designed both of those things. Those guys are worth like 9 digits, and I'm like sitting on this 6, 7 digit world. What the hell, right? And so I kind of figured that, okay, theoretically figured that the only way you become rich is not by being a service provider, but by owning the brand or by, by being a brand owner. So one of the reasons I moved from an agency to a software company was, okay, fine, I'm the marketing guy of the brand. So while that was interesting, but very quickly I actually found that also boring because advertising gives you a variety of things to do, right?
Absolutely,
And I
yes.
was only handling one product. And I said, yeah, this is not right, right? So I did make more money, but when the company sold, I made money, right? But you know, uh, it wasn't greatly fun. So after that, I kept trying to figure out what's the way where I can have variety and ownership, right? So I said
Okay.
ownership to give me money, variety to give my mind, keep my mind excited, right? So anyway, uh, go forward to the point when people said, yeah, help us with the company. So a couple of guys I figured, I said, ye tera brand, ye rehna chahiye. And finally they'll turn around and say, yeah, tu karna. And they would not have money to start. So finally I'd say, what, मैं अपना पैसा डालता हूँ इसमें, and I'll take 2%, 5%, 10%, 8%, whatever your company. And then you know what? What I hated about advertising, what I loved is all the time spending you spend doing great ideas, and I hated was half the time you had to try to sell to the client who didn't want to buy the idea. I thought that was crazy. I mean, it's a great idea. You should simply buy it, right? So I wanted to, because the client was always suspicious of you because you made your money on advertising commission. So the client was suspicious when you said you need to spend a lot of money because it's साला तू मेरा माल नहीं मार रहा है because उसमें से तुम 15% बनाने वाला है, right?
Correct.
तो
Media.
But here in this side, when I said, you know what, I am the investor in your company, suddenly the trust is new because I am alongside the founder. I'm not against the founder. My economics are in line with him. When he gets rich, I get rich. It's
Correct.
not like I make any commission, right? Because I am getting rich when he's getting rich because I'm also paid by equity, right? So the trust immediately came. I said, wow, that's awesome. Because I don't have to convince you because I'm with you. I'm your partner out here, right? And I would say zero commission and I'd take equity. That's when I said, okay, when I started taking equity, I said, after I took it 2 or 3 times, I figured, guess what? I'm an angel investor. So then, of
Oh,
course, I had to go and buy every book on angel investing to figure out who the hell I was. So I said, Acha, this is who I am. Right. So I ended up and said, oh, I'm my angel investor room. So this was in the late 90s, etc. Anyway, when I came to India, I started continuing to invest as an angel. I had a fund called Passion Fund, Bagara. We did okay. And it was quite a funny fund because I had one guy who was ex
like,
IIT, IIM.
what was the size of your first fund?
It was just my money, maybe $5-10 million, not very big. Yeah, I mean, it was in late 90s, something of that sort. And again, I was like, "No, मैं घर से काम करूंगा," and my partner also said, "मैं भी घर से काम करूंगा." We said, "Office क्या है?" So in Bandra, there used to be a cafe called Just Around the Corner. I think it's
Oh
still
yes,
there. It's now called uh, हाँ,
it's called something else, but
हाँ, ऐसे ही कुछ है. So our office was JATC. So if you went to the website, it would say table this just around the corner, and business plans would come. And the poor guy, behind the counter would keep the plan, sir, आपका business plan आया है. And it was a great place to have meetings. We'd have meetings once a week because we'd sit at a table and all the other entrepreneurs would be at different tables having chai, coffee, waiting for that time for meeting with us. It was great because you wouldn't feel bad about meeting somebody wait because, you know, they were having chai, coffee and they were
correct.
paying for it themselves. हमें लगता है अभी भी पैसे देने की जरूरत नहीं थी. So it was good fun. Learned a little bit about investing, etc. And then that parlayed, I spoke at a couple of conferences. In fact, one of my mentors, Kanwal Rekhi, the guy who founded TIE, sent a newspaper clipping where we talked at this conference, the first internet conference in India in 2020, where he and I were both speaking. And that
Okay,
kind of set the internet race going. So I met another guy at the conference, a guy called Praveen Gandhi. He and I came together and founded a fund called Seed Fund, which is the
okay,
first kind of institutional venture fund in India at that time. Again, in naivety, we said, "Arey, kya karenge?" We said, theory was, okay, we're going to do something using internet. So we should get an internet company as an investor. We're going to do something using mobile phone. We should get a mobile phone company as an investor. We're doing something using networks. We should get some network company as an investor. ऐसे कुछ idea था. तो randomly went, I didn't know anything. I called a few friends at Google. They said, हाँ ये पैसा ले लो. Then Motorola ने बोला पैसा ले लो और Reliance वो वाला मतलब अनिल अंबानी वाला Reliance बोला पैसा ले लो. And later on, we figured that we were the first fund that Reliance had that Google had ever invested in. So we
very
didn't know, right?
wow.
So we started Seed Fund, and then I was quote unquote friend of Google. Then Larry and Sergey would come to India, I would meet them, etc., and all of that stuff. So it was good fun. We did well. We read
Any
Buzz.
notable investments in from that fund? Any notable companies that you
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
invested in?
So, yeah, the very first company we did was Redbus, which we did pretty well. In fact, we invested at when they were doing 2 tickets a day, right? And we finally sold the company when they were doing 125,000 tickets a day. And the really interesting thing is we kind of helped fire that growth without a single ad in print or TV. All right. So one of my thesis then came from them saying, the entire idea of virality in the sense that if you need to advertise, you probably need to die. You have to figure out how to grow by word of mouth. So we figured out, and long story, what, and there was a particular thing in Redbus. Every time Funny would come in the stream and say, Mahesh, I need 50 lakhs, I need 1 crore. I was on board and say, no, we'll figure out a way to get these customers coming to us without you needing to advertise. And we did the same with CarWale.
This is an offshoot.
Yeah.
Word of mouth is great because I know you're obviously saving ad dollars over there. Is that framework applicable for most industries, most brands, or is it only for new brands which are disruptive in nature? What's your take on that?
I think actually it is still, I mean, I mean, if I was to very broadly talk about it, I have a slightly more nuanced understanding of brands. I was younger and stupider then, and I was a very cut and dried. And now I understand there are some gray areas, but still largely one of the things that I've been professing for a few decades now, I think is still largely true. If I look at kind of 2000s pre-2000s industries, right? If I take pharmaceuticals now, there are maybe 20 companies worth $1 billion. right? And each of them, their market shares are 2% of the global market, 3%, 4%, 5%, 6%, 7%, 8%. Maybe the largest company is 10, 12%. Similarly, if you look at automotives, right? 20 top car brands, everybody with, single digit or very low double digit percentage of global market share. And so on and so forth. In category after category after category, like even soft drinks, there's Coke, there's Pepsi, there's Sprite, there's this, there's this, there's this, and so on and so forth, right? And he has like low double digit or single digit percentage market shares, all those brands. But now when you look at the modern equivalents of those, right? In the internet era, the post 2000 kind of versions of those. So if you go from the soft drink business where there are dozens and dozens of brands, each with very small market shares, and you come to the energy drink era. So in energy drinks, Red Bull has 50, 60% market share. Monster has 20, 30%, and everybody else is, right? So there's that. From internal combustion engine cars, you come to electric cars. Tesla has 40, 50% market share. BYD has 20, 30%, right? Everybody is like, 10, 9%. So we've come from, and even more so when you come to internet businesses. I mean, if you look at encyclopedias, I mean, Britannia and Encarta, DK, they all had, you know, single digit, double digit market shares. Google has 98% market share in search. In chatting, WhatsApp is number one with 70%, and maybe Telegram is
So
number two.
what are the pieces around it? So what
So the
are
thesis, there are two theses around this, right? One thesis is that we're going from a place where uh, nobody dominates to a place where there are dominant brands in every sector, right? And those dominant brands take the 40, 50, 60, 70% of the market. One point I used to think it was 90%, second brand would take 9%, and third brand would take 0.9%. That's probably true in the internet. But in the real world, it's probably, 60%, 20%, 10%, something like that, right? So one that if you're a startup in a sector, you either have to dominate or you will die. While if you're a startup in pharmaceuticals, कुछ ना कुछ हो ही जाएगा. Because the other guys at 1% market share, you will survive at 0.1% market share. But in the internet world, you will not survive at 0.1% market share. You either got to be the 90 or the 9 or the point 0.9. You can't be a point 0.1. All right. So essentially, you have to be 1 or 2 or 3 or you don't matter. So it's far, far more tough to win in this new world out here because it's very, very dominant. So that was my first thesis, right? It still largely remains true today. And my second thesis was a strange offshoot of this. If you look at the number one brands in each of these thesis, sectors we talked about, Red Bull or Tesla or WhatsApp or Google, right? They're all never advertised.
absolutely they don't
So
advertise.
that's a crazy one, right? So it's not just coincidence, right? So essentially, the two-part thesis said something that turned a lot of marketing on its head by saying, A, uh, you absolutely have to dominate or you will die. And B, you cannot dominate by overspending. All right, which is crazy, right? At least in this world. So how did each of these things get there? Tesla is again like $1 trillion car company or close to $1 trillion. It doesn't advertise because it makes the news, right? So everything that Elon says or whatever, nobody pays for it. It gets amplified. It's interesting. People share it, and it's the news, right? Ditto with Xiaomi in India. They didn't spend a lot of money, and they followed the Tesla playbook to do whatever it is they did. They became one without spending. Ditto with Red Bull. Red Bull's entire thing is we will not advertise. What we will do is we will put our money and build a race car. All right. The race car will win races.
Right, all these are global examples. I mean,
Yeah.
I've not seen an Indian brand which has sort of taken off, without advertising or without the help of media. Uh, I don't think there's any Indian brand that comes to mind.
No, I think you
These are
would. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, in some ways, actually, Channel V was such a brand and MTV was such a brand, right? We never advertised. We had no money. Everybody knew of us, even though we were like a tiny, tiny brand out there. All right. Our share of ratings was basically we barely made 0.2, 0.3, 0.5. Maybe we were a one rating company, right? But the others were 20, 30, 35 rating companies. They were 35 times the size of us in ratings, but they were only 5 times the size of in revenues. So we were pulling revenues 7 times, 5 times more than what we should have been pulling. All right.
uh,
So and if you look at it, there will be many others. So if you look at the brands gone viral in India, whether you know you look at any of the comedian brands, Kunal Kamra hasn't spent $1 on marketing. Who doesn't know Kunal, right? So we still are there, right? In fact, one of the clients we worked with.
one of the reasons I feel is Indian brands or Indian ethos is very conservative. So
I'm
some of
not
the
saying
things that
good.
they want to do is, because for virality to happen, you got to be a little risk taker.
Yeah,
Indian brands
absolutely.
will not
Yeah.
take risk,
Uh,
and they'll play it
yes
safe.
and no. Yeah, it depends. Most Indian, like again, I said it is again. We did a lot of work in 2014, which actually came back to bite us in the ass, right? Uh,
For
f-
which one?
for this political party called the Aam Aadmi Party in Delhi.
Okay,
All right,
Kejriwal.
Kejriwal, right? And they had 1 crore to spend. The BJP then had 100 crores to spend. We did a bunch of work. They ended up winning 67 on 70 seats in Delhi, primarily virally, while being outspent hundreds to one. Of course, it came back to bite us in the butt because I got screwed by the ruling party and fake cases got foisted against me. That's standard operating procedure. All that shit happened, right? After that, it's yeah, we'll never touch a political party again. No matter how much you pay us, etc. Right? So it works. Absolutely works in India. Absolutely works in India.
Any examples from that campaign for the Aam Aadmi Party? What
Yeah, I don't
tactics?
want to talk about it. I don't want to get into more trouble with the guy with the authorities in India, right? If you remember nice stuff back then, a lot of it was essentially kind of stuff that uh,
Gotcha.
yeah. So even now, you see, it's not just about the power of media. I mean, there will be interesting brands that come up that grow by word of mouth. I mean, if you look at Chalo, uh, you know,
The
Chalo
app.
yeah, Chalo is run by Mohit. Mohit has done a great job. Mohit used to run CarWale, which I had funded, right? A lot of the learnings in CarWale we will simply engineer in a feature that brings word of mouth. So I'll give you an example, right? So when we did CarWale with Mohit, who runs Chalo right now, they again said we want to do advertising, blah blah blah. And we came back and said, okay, you know what's the issue? And we wanted to be a large marketplace for used cars and new cars, right? And I said, not enough people are listing cars. So we dug a lot deeper and figured that the reason that people are not listing enough cars is they really don't know what a car is worth. So let's say, you have a Hyundai i10, whatever, it's like a 5-year-old Hyundai i10, which is in 50,000 kilometers. Now, Gautam, you don't know how much it's worth. आप अपने मैकेनिक के पास जाते हो वो बोलता है सर 4 लाख मिलेंगे and your friend says नहीं 6 लाख मिलेगा. Somebody else says 3 लाख मिलेगा. Now you don't know. The thing is you don't care about it, but you don't want to be cheated.
Right.
अगर 6 लाख मिलेगा मैं 3 लाख में क्यों दूं? No, you don't know what it's worth. That was an issue that bedeviled that industry back then. So what we did was interesting. We went to the RTO and they gave us we legally bought all the data which talked about every car sale, new or old, right? And we basically put that in a really super long spreadsheet and figured ki theek hai, Thane registered Hyundai i10 with 50,000 kilometers, 2000 whatever it is ka year mein, roughly what is the average price it is sold for?
Got you. So you sort of took all the historical data from
Ha, and
RTO.
we created a pricing guide and we put it on the website. Boss, that
Oh,
took the traffic up 6x,
mm,
right? That took the traffic up 6x because we essentially gave people something that said, boss, I now know how much my car is worth.
mm,
So that entirely grew virally. So Redbus is same thing. How did we grow Redbus virally? We grew Redbus essentially by saying, okay, so let's say you're in Bombay and you want to go to Kolhapur. Back then, you didn't know. You would say, हाँ ठीक है, हम दादर बस स्टॉप जाएंगे, वहां से बस लेंगे, पुणे जाएंगे. पुणे उतरेंगे हम बस में और देखेंगे हमारे पास कौन सा बस है. कोल्हापुर का अगर बस है तो पकड़ लेंगे, नहीं तो रात में कहीं ठहर जाएंगे, अगले दिन का बस लेंगे. Right? And what we did was these guys did this neat contract with a bus company from Bombay to Pune and a bus company from Pune to Kolhapur. And they sold it to you saying, boss, seat number 21A, Bombay to Pune in operator X, and seat number 20B in Pune to Kolhapur in bus operator B, Y. And you're like, boss, this is incredible. मुझे through ticket मिल गया. All right.
okay.
Oh, with seat number. And that simply grew Redbus 6x or 8x again because we were the only guys. All we did was we engineered a product, a feature that was so remark worthy. So I keep pushing guys and say, what is remark worthy? Even with the companies I work with, the funds, the companies I invest in today, what is remark worthy about your business? Tell me something that's remark worthy. And if not, let's engineer something that's remark worthy because that is going to help you grow by word of mouth and that's really going to get your biggest acceleration. Of course, I'm more nuanced right now. I understand a lot more how to add to that acceleration with paid advertising and how to
You
do
said
it right.
something
And so,
interesting about engineering the growth. How do you engineer something remarkworthy in your own words? Remarkworthy. How do you engineer that?
So it's
What do you process? Could you just, I mean, can you give an example?
yeah.
How do you engineer that remark-worthy process?
So
You know,
I think a
I mean,
lot of this.
which brand would you like to remark worthy in India? Take any brand and just top of mind and say,
Why don't you give me two or three brands? Let's work on two or three brands. You give me a few.
uh, any brand from India. I would say, let's say, I worked in uh, let's say Ola cabs. Those guys are big, but the Ola bikes and all. I don't think they sort of do well.
Yeah,
They always getting hammered over there.
sure.
What's your advice to those guys?
Okay, it's a hard one, but let's try again, right? So let's say I was Ola and I was Ola bikes, and Ola bikes essentially are bike drivers who give you one pillion you can ride behind. All right, so it takes one passenger. Now the interesting thing I might do out there is to say, all right, my insight. I'm just inventing this on the spot.
Yeah,
Is
but
that
the Ola bikes, not the vehicle sharing business, but just the bike, the EV bike which they sell,
oh, you mean the scooters?
the scooters, the
Oh,
Ola
scooters.
scooters.
Oh, I thought you said the single ride bikes. Okay.
No, no.
All right. So let's talk about Ola scooters, right? Or whatever. Okay, fine. So the
And they compete with Bajaj, TVS, all the big brands, Hero, Motocorp. So these are established players out there who've been there for last a few decades, and then these are all upstarts trying to sort of upend the market over there. There's Ether and there's Ola and there's a bunch of other guys over there. Uh, and their market shares are not very big. I mean, the markets are big, but now the big guys are catching up with them.
all right. So I think uh, the let's assume that I've been out of India for 2 3 years. I
Okay.
maybe I don't have my finger on the pulse, but let's assume that Ola has a bad name, bad reputation, terrible service history, etc. All of that stuff.
All of these things happen, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
bikes blow up.
Bikes blow up, etc., and so on and so forth, right? And the entire thing is you can't go wrong buying TVS, you can't go wrong buying Bajaj, Ether. I don't know, whether it's what the entire deal is, right? So at that point that uh, Ola is there, and it has some kind of a strange kind of history because people don't trust it enough to buy it, and so on and so forth. So, couple of couple of interesting options. One might be saying, okay, let's say that the bike, let's say hypothetically, let's say it costs 1 lakh of rupees, right? And let's say that in a year, that a typical guy drives it for like 2,000 kilometers a month, 24,000 kilometers, 50,000 kilometers in 2 years. All right, and let's say that that's what it is. That's 50,000 kilometers over 2 years, and you just have to like charge it for that, and so on and so forth. And what if I would go and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to sell you this bike, and I'm going to sell it to you for 2 rupees 50 paise a kilometer for the first 2 years, and it's free after that. And for the first 2 years, I'll maintain it. All right. So essentially, what I'm doing is I'm just taking away the entire capital intense cost. And guy says, कितना यार 2.5 रुपए किलोमीटर का देने का है, right? मैंने अगर 2,000 किलोमीटर चलाए तो 5,000 दे दूंगा, 200 चलाए तो 500 दे दूंगा, or whatever else it is, right? And you say first 2 years I'll pay whatever it is you drive, 2 rupees 50, right? So essentially, what I'm doing is instead of a lakh, I'm making, assuming it's 50,000. I don't know if the numbers, right? I'll make 1.25 lakhs, right? Which is I'm making 25,000 more in 2 years, which is equally the 12.5% interest or whatever else it is. So I make it back, and I take over the cost, and after that, the guy gets a free bike, and I can have an AMC after that for like 5,000 rupees a year or something. I think I would actually disrupt the market at that point. All right, because the other guys have too much to lose, because Bajaj or TVS will say, can't say कि भाई मेरे electric bike पे ही मैं 2 rupees 50 पे दूंगा, मैं अपने petrol वाली bike में नहीं दूंगा, right?
Got you.
So you have to do something. But I would imagine that something like this would be something that would wake up people and say, hey, that's interesting. For 3 rupees a kilometer, that's it, right? I can ride this bike, right? Which is cheaper than an auto, which is what, 7 rupees, 8 rupees a kilometer, whatever the heck it is, and so on and so forth, right? And you can do the maths at that point in time, and it takes away the thought of maintenance because you're saying uska maintenance मेरे पे है, मैं maintain कर लूंगा ये 2 साल के लिए, all right? So that
That's
might
very
be one way
got it.
of engineering the virality into the process, right? By engineering it, it doesn't just have to mean physical coding engineering or metal engineering, but somewhere in the product, right? Somewhere in the offering, you do something which is so remark worthy that people say, "जो, ये इसके बारे में सोचना तो पड़ेगा."
Gotcha. So, Mahesh, when you sort of invest in companies, what are two or three things that you look in entrepreneurs or the people that you invest with? What is the checklist over there?
Yeah. So the key thing is, first of all, I mean, the standard stuff, the IITM, I don't care two bits about it. मैं तो खुद 12वीं pass हूँ, right? In fact, many of the guys are the overqualified guys are grifters. They think कि मैं, you know, because I'm IITM. Anyway, leave that. I mean, there's no positive, there's no negative. I mean, for me, 12वीं pass है तो ठीक है. Everything about that is fine. In fact, what I really look for is how much have you burnt your bridges, right? So, and that's the big one. As in, how much are you invested in this? Is that do you have a plan B? And if you have a plan B, I'm not so interested. I don't want you to have a plan B,
Really? Okay.
right? I don't want you to say कि ये काम नहीं किया तो मैं वापस अपना नौकरी में चले जाऊंगा, right? Because the thing is that I've now made more than 80 investments, right? About 60, 65 in India, about 15, 20 in Dubai, right? And I've learned a little. I mean, some have succeeded, some have failed. I mean, one thing I've learned is first of all, it's a crapshoot. I mean, eh, no matter what you think at the beginning, things shit happens, right? Things change. So the only way to look at it is like a portfolio, or like rolling the dice. I mean, you have to roll the dice that many times if you want to get that many sixes, right? So you hear the same way. I mean, probably if you want to get like one or two winners, you have to invest in 10 times as many companies. So if you want two winners, you need to invest in 20 companies, right? So broadly, that's my kind of a take out here.
So
So
one is the person shouldn't have a plan B. So that's
yeah,
one thing you look at in person.
yeah,
What
yeah.
are the other things that you look at before you put in the money?
Yeah. So ideally, you have to be so committed, so but I mean, I'll give you an example. A long time ago, I remember, I was sitting at just around the corner, and this very well turned out lady came with, very, very a lot of jewelry, etc. Very well turned out lady, very, very, very classy lady came, and she was pitching a startup to me, and we were just having a conversation at one point, and I said, "That's wonderful jewelry, ma'am." She said,
Mm.
"Yeah, it's my hobby. I've been collecting it for 20 years." I said, "Is it real?" She says, "Yeah, of course. I mean, it's worth 2 crores." I said, "Wow, that's amazing." I said, "So you have jewelry worth 2 crores. Why are you coming to me to raise a crore?" She says, "Oh my God, my jewelry. I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to sell it." So I said, "Man, you you want me to put my money where you're not risking anything yourself, right?" And her face fell. Right. And of course, I didn't invest in that situation, and rightly or wrongly, I don't know. But my thing is that if you're not willing to put something behind it, if you don't have skin in the game, if you're not taking a risk, I'm not really interested. I'm not here to fund your lifestyle. I'm here to kind of, uh, you know, uh, make it all the way with you. The second thing is, to also understand that not every company is investable. I mean, if you look at it a traditional investment way, I mean, let's say, Gautam, you come to me with a company and say, okay, Gautam, and you say, Mahesh, I'll give you the share certificate, give me so much money. So I give you the money and you give me a share certificate, and I'll probably get 5, 10, 15, 20% of your company. What do I do with that share certificate? I can hang it on the wall, but I can't eat it, right? The only way I make money off that share certificate is I have to sell it. Now, who do I sell it to? I can either sell it back to you. That's called a management buyout. But if you already own 80, 90% of the company, why will you buy my 10% at some, 5x the money? You won't do that. So I can't sell it to you. So the only other two places I can sell it, one, I can sell it to somebody else. But why would that somebody else buy it? You know, unless he's also buying the rest of the company. That means is your company acquirable, right? And the third is you go IPO, then I sell it to Amjanta, the public. So my
Absolutely.
basic point is that if you can't be acquired and you can't be IPO'd, then I can't invest. And this one, not many people understand this truly, right? You come to me with saying, I have a gift shop, I have this, I have that. And I say, yeah, but you can't be acquired and you can't go IPO, how can I invest? And it's a very tough one. And even many people don't even take that call. So you have to be acquired again, you have to be absolutely the dominant leader in the market. You have to be number one, number two, or number three.
Businesses that in the future could be scalable and probably have an IPO sort of a
Well, but
future.
I mean, I don't buy the word scale and scalable and all that. I mean, that's big deal. Everybody puts their weight behind it. You can have an IT company that's scalable, but that's fine, but it still can't be acquired and still can't go public, right? So the scalability is not really the point. The point is, can you go public or can you be acquired? And for you to be acquired, you have to be a dominant one, two, or three, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for you to go public, it's actually much easier than being than being acquired in India at least. So now I'm actually taking a few of my companies in the next couple of years, hopefully two, three of them public in India, right? if you understand how to play the market and do that out there. So I think that's so because of putting these two filters, 99 out of 100 companies will probably not make these two filters. Now, beyond that, it's like, okay, fine. Well, so are you exitable? Two, do you have skin in the game? I mean, are you in this, or is it just like a time pass for you? Three, is there something remark worthy about your business? Exactly. I mean, does it have this power of potential viral growth where you don't come to me and say, bhaiya, brand banana, ad lagao. And most of the companies that do brand bana ke, they're the ones that fail. I mean, all the ones that you know, uh, uh, put a huge amount of money to advertise are the ones that always crash. I mean, everybody makes money of them. The media gets rich, Times of India makes money, and Star TV makes money, and the companies don't go anywhere, right? And so it's a joke that 60% of all venture money goes into Google and Facebook. You know,
Yeah, that's
so might as well. Why should I invest in you? I might as well buy Google and Facebook stock, right? Because मेरा पैसा वहीं जाने वाला है, right? So that's what I tell people. So if you're going to spend on Google and Facebook, I'm sorry, I'm just simply going to invest in Google and Facebook stock. Why would I buy in your company? Because that's where the money is going. They will make the money, right? So and then beyond that, it's a couple of things. One, can I help in some way? As in, let's say you come to me with a chemical process plant, Gautam. Up, even though I studied whatever little of chemical engineering, मुझे कुछ खास पता नहीं है उसके बारे में, right? तो ऐसे भैया मैं जानता नहीं हूँ उसके बारे में, right? So I don't want to be just a financial investor. I can't open a door for you. I can't do anything for you. I can't help you grow. तो किसी और के पास जा. I mean, I don't want to be a dumb investor. Go find a smart investor who knows something about your business who can open a door. And the fifth one is, do we get along? Yeah, can you come talk to me? Have a beer, have a Red Bull, have something, sit, chat. You know, कुछ कर सकते हैं क्या? That's basically what I sit back and say. So these are the 4 5 things I kind of look at, and that's about it. Because finally, it's a long term relationship, right? I mean, I invested in this beer company, Dulali, in 2006. It's 2025 now. It's 19 years. All right,
wow.
and I'm still waiting for an exit. I own a reasonable chunk of the company, and maybe 2 3 साल में कुछ होगा, right? So it's going to be a long term thing, right? You'll go through shit, you'll go to good times, bad times, and so on and so forth. So that's about it. And finally, in the end, it's a crapshoot. I know fully well that even with all my care and all my filtering, out of the 80 companies, I'll be really lucky if 20%, there's 16 do really well.
And of all the entrepreneurs who sort of make it to the finishing line or sort of cross a certain hurdle and they sort of become big in size, what are two or three character traits in those entrepreneurs that you identify? You sort of, but to sort of summarize, these are two or three things which is common across all the companies that have succeeded in your portfolio.
So I think the couple of things I mean, one, there's this belief that you need a team to succeed. And I haven't seen that, right? I mean, if I look at Redbus, it was funny. If I look at CarWale, it was Mohit. If I look at Chalo, it's Mohit. I mean, all of them are one-person companies, right? If I look even outside of here, I mean, if you look at Facebook, it's Zuckerberg, right? And you look at Amazon, it's Bezos. So this entire uh, Silicon Valley thing, ki team chahiye, is mostly bullshit, right? It's like I don't, I haven't seen that really out there in India. I mean, I haven't seen great team-driven companies in India. I really haven't, right? uh, and that had proper successful worthwhile exits. They're mostly one person, or even if there's like more than one person, it's a statistical anomaly, and not something to say team ki zarurat hai ki one person ki zarurat. So I'm not saying it has to be one person. I'm saying I reject the thing that always has to be team. I reject that. It's not that being a team is unqualified, it disqualifies you. It's that it's like, yeah, it's not necessary, right? I think that's the one thing. The second thing is that extraordinary calmness and resilience. So you will rarely find these guys shouting in a crowd. All right. So there'll be much more of the Jeff Bezos type, which is chup. I mean, look at Funny, you look at Mohit, they're quiet guys. You take them to a party, you meet them, they will not be the guys jumping up and down, right? They are the quiet guys, right? And they're not the peacocks, right? They're the quiet leaders. You'll find that everywhere among most of the guys. The guys who really made it are quiet, calm guys. And they have resilience in the sense all it takes for them to say, or kar lenge na. I'm not here to give up easily. The point really is that you may not succeed on your first business model. And that's fine. You got some money. You go out there and you change and you change and you change because the market's changing. I mean, so what you invested in is rarely what you exit. You end up exiting a different company. I mean, the company is doing something different when you exit it compared to what it was doing when you got it. A lot of the time, very rarely is the same business that you got into that you get out of 10 years later, right? So as you change, that's perfectly fine. And the key thing that you have to understand why it becomes easier is that around the 4, 5, 6, 7 year mark, 80% of your rivals die in any business, right? All the guys who started with you, you make it to the 5 year mark, 80% of them will die by then. All you got to do is not die,
Correct.
right? All you
Correct. But
got to do is not die. It's not hard. It's like a marathon. You don't have to run faster than the others. You just have to make sure you're walking, because other guys they'll fall, and you can keep walking, right?
correct.
So it's not like कि भैया ये कुछ बड़ा ये sprint में करना है, ये सब इतना कोई नहीं है, right? So it's really one of resilience where somebody says, okay, I'm doing this no matter what, right? And they're just quiet, uh, you know, uh, you know, simple, quiet, logical, resilient people. They're not, IQ 200 geniuses, etc. They have quiet confidence. I mean, I think that's what I see again and again.
Okay, so Mahesh, I think in interest of time, so as we try to wrap it up, a couple more questions. One is, uh, if you were to go back, as a 17-year-old, would you still continue uh, the same path, or would you sort of go and get a formal education and get those IIT, IM things? Would you do anything different?
Nahin, nahin, I mean, I think back then when I was 17 years old, I was very much into ornithology, birds of the non-feathered kind, though. And IITs and IIMs never had those birds of a non-feathered kind. So I mean, the guy I was back then, I think I took the calls that were right for me back then. I've had a great life, and I will have a great life going on. I mean, I think one of the interesting things is a few years ago, I was 54, and my dad retired when he was 54 from the army, and he and I were sitting down and having a chat, and he said, "So retirement's up done, settled." I said, "Dad, I just started 3 companies this year." He says, "Son, are you not settled? Do you need some help? Can I help you? I mean, do you need some money?" And I said, "No, no, Dad, uh, no, no, I'm okay." And then I figured that, I think the key thing is that in his generation, and maybe your parents and mine or whatever, you got retired from the service from government at the age of somewhere between 50 and 60, because it was believed that you'll die at 70, and your thing is retire करके 10 साल जी लो, and उसके बाद kick the bucket. In fact, among Tam Brams, we have this thing called a Shashtriyat Purti, which is you turn 60 and people do this puja and say, okay, fine, you've done, you can die. अब तुम मर सकते हो, right? You have this entire thing. And I think the big difference that's happened in these two generations is I got vaccinated, I got inoculated, I don't really drink, smoke, I don't have too many bad habits or whatever. And if you look at statistics, essentially in our generation, half of us will live to be 95. All right. So the question of retirement at 55 doesn't turn up, because what the hell we do for the last 40 years of your life is ridiculous, right? So
Yeah.
I kind of figured that it's okay. Maybe I'll work till 75, 80 if things go well. And there's still 25 years or 20, 25 years, 15, 20 years for that to happen, right? So I think the entire thing is that uh, I'm I'm I still have a career ahead, and
Wonderful.
so
Love,
so yeah,
love us.
so does everybody. So there's no way to find thoughts, right? It's essentially that all you have is a great life. I mean, I used to believe this. I mean, the analogy I use, I once wrote a piece about it called, "We were all brought up to believe that at the end of the rainbow is a pot of gold. Ki bhaiya, put your head down, work very hard, and one day you will have this money to enjoy your retirement, right? Whatever." And I believe at the end of the rainbow, you die, right? And there's nothing. I mean, you may have all the money in the world, but what's the point if you're dead by then, right? So I
Absolutely.
actually believe that your rainbow is your pot of gold. Your path of the 90 years of your life, 95 years of your life is all you have, right? And you came broke, and when you die, you're not going to take any money with you. You're going to die broke anyway, right? So the only thing that matters is what you do in these 95 years, and how much
Absolutely.
you learn, and what you experience, and what you try. And I think the
It's
more
a
thing,
journey. More than a destination, is a journey which is worth
yeah.
experiencing.
So the
Well,
destination is dead. We are all going to die, right? So
yeah.
enjoy that, right? हम सब मरने वाले हैं. So only thing that matters is what you do before you die, right? And what you try and what you see. So I really like travel. I read. I've done, I think, 110 countries or whatever on an Indian passport, and so I
I think I've read one of your blogs on which countries are accept Indian
Yeah, yeah.
passports.
Sadly, our passport is
Absolutely
getting
correct.
weaker and weaker, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it used to be at 70 countries, now it's at 58 countries or whatever. but still, I enjoy travel. I just like 3 days ago, I went to Armenia, which is beautiful, right? So and one day I want to go to space. So that's the 201st country or whatever else it is. So I think the only thing is that you have a full life and do every damn thing you can, which is why I don't regret that I've had so many different careers. I've been a TV announcer, I've been a filmmaker, I've been a copywriter, I've been a TV station head, I've been like an investor. I've done random shit here, and that's okay. I think I'll keep doing this. Yeah, I've launched satellites. I now actively build satellites. There's a bunch of things I do. Uh, and there will be more things I hope I do. If I stop learning, I don't know what I'll do.
So, my last question before we sort of wrap it up. Now, in the age of AI and that it's going to append a lot of jobs and stuff like that. And for an average 25, 30-year-old guy who's sort of a guy or a girl who's trying to sort of make his career and who's not as a risk taker as you are, he was sort of wants to have a decent career. What is advice to such a person?
First of all, finish the thought of having a decent career, right? I mean, the entire thing in my father's time, a career was one guy, was working in the government for 32 years before he got pensioned. Forget the pension. Later on, the career became working at 3 companies, 4 companies in life for 7, 8 years per company. Forget that. All right. Now you're going to work at multiple companies for much shorter stints. You're going to work at companies in parallel. All right. So earlier you worked for a company. Now you have to look at it as saying you have a path, and various companies will attach themselves at different points to your path, and sometimes simultaneously. So it's perfectly cool. I mean, I run 5 companies right now. It's perfectly cool to run multiple companies at a time. Once upon it was frowned. Till Elon Musk went and said, "Hey, you know what? I run Tesla and I run SpaceX and I run Neuralink and I run this and I run that." And people said, "Oh, okay, so you can." So the standard venture capital shit ki ek hi cheez karo aur mat karo, ya all the team member is all bullshit, right? So the entire thing is that you look at a career as the companies that hang themselves around you, as opposed to you following it in the coattails of a company. The companies follow in your coattails, so you have a path, no matter how circuitous. Companies attach themselves to you. Be open to working with different businesses at the same point in time. All right. There's nothing wrong. You can live in India and work for a company in the US and in Ukraine at the same time. It's perfectly fine, and get paid for it in the United Arab Emirates, and do whatever, and it's perfectly fine. So I think you've got to break down the idea that there is one career, one company, one good employer. There are no lifetime employers. At the first sign, I mean, we know that we're going through a pretty shitty time right now in India. Every IT company now is laying off hundreds of thousands of people, right? Because of
In fact,
AI.
Microsoft need of 10,000 people. Just today I was reading.
Yeah, so the entire thing कि मेरा बेटा Infosys गया या Accenture गया doesn't mean anything anymore, because at the first छी, Infosys will let 10,000 people go. At the first thum, Accenture will let 50,000 people go, right?
Correct.
The company owes nothing to you. You can say that I am loyal to the company, but the company is not loyal to you, right? So I think you've got to really understand right now that it is not so much that कंपनी का इनकॉर्पोरेटेड का तुम एम्प्लॉयी हो, तुम इनकॉर्पोरेटेड का एम्प्लॉयी कंपनी है. It's the other way of looking at it, right? So there's a Gotham Incorporated, and at some point, client X will attach, and agency Y will attach, and client Z will attach, and whatever will attach, and Gotham Incorporated. So think of yourself as a company of one, all right,
Absolutely.
all the way. So turn this entire thing from you following a company to a company following you, all right, and then attach yourselves to various vendors, clients at different points in your career, and that's perfectly fine.
But thanks, Bhai. This was really helpful. I think there's a lot we could talk about, but in the interest of time, we'll sort of pause it over here. Or maybe we can do another podcast few
Yeah.
months down the line. But it was wonderful having you and sort of
Thanks, man.
sharing
I'm sorry if
experiences.
I took up all of your airtime, but yeah.
No, no, it was wonderful. It was great. Thank you so much.
Decent.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Bye bye.